What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the JT Sports Podcast. I'm your host, JT. Hope that everybody is blessed, not stressed on this wonderful Thursday. I just saw that new Fantastic Four trailer that came out, and I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I think it looks dope. I'm really hyped up for the movie. I just hope that it's not a disappointment. The Fantastic Four is probably my favorite superhero group, and I can't wait for this movie to come out. But one thing that I'm not looking forward to is the potential options that the Steelers could have starting at quarterback this year. And we're going to start this episode off discussing how they are getting effed over in the worst way possible by a particular quarterback. The NFL, despite all the years that Jim Harbaugh has continued to win, they still don't understand how. The Miami Dolphins are currently unraveling right now with the recent events that has transpired. Vic Fangio, the Eagles' current defensive coordinator, his exit foreshadowed everything that's going wrong with the Dolphins right now. There's a member of the media that once again is wrongly predicting the downfall of the Kansas City Chiefs. The Buffalo Bills have been the kings of the AFC East for a very long time now. But that's about to change. They have a new problem that they have to worry about. And the Carolina Panthers, there's a rapper that they need to go ahead and give a job to due to the magic that he put on Bryce Young that had him balling out after his benching. Before we dive into it, do me a favor. If you want to support us, all you got to do is smash that like button. Helps us rank higher in the YouTube search algorithm. Share the pod with your friends. Wherever you get your podcast from, give us a 5-star review. Apple, Spotify. The links are down in the description down below. And let's dive into it. The Steelers find themselves once again in a very uncomfortable situation with their quarterback predicament. It was expected at the start of the offseason that Justin Fields was going to run it back in the black and gold for a second season, but instead, he made the shocking decision to sign with the New York Jets, and he recently came out and explained why he picked the Jets over the Steelers. He pretty much said that he felt it was a little weird how he got benched. He didn't like how they handled the quarterback situation between him and Russ, and I don't think any of us can fault him for feeling the way that he did about the predicament. You're 4-2 as the starting quarterback. You have the team on top of arguably the toughest division in the NFL. You're playing good football, and yet Mike Tomlin decides to go with age-washed Russell Wilson. So then you pivot to Aaron Rodgers. And I thought that Aaron Rodgers being with the Steelers would be a perfect fit. He has a lot of respect for Mike Tomlin. You got a good group of wide receivers to throw the football to. DK Metcalf, George Pickens, Roman Wilson, if he's able to stay healthy. But it seems as if Aaron Rodgers, if he doesn't get an opportunity to play with the Vikings this year, he's going to end up retiring. So now the Steelers have been forced to pivot their attention to the NFL draft to find their next signal caller for this year, which I was hoping would be Shedeur Sanders. You know, he recently took a top 30 visit to the Steelers not too long ago. He said that he gives it a 10 out of 10. He enjoyed his conversations with Mike Tomlin, reminds him a lot of his dad, Dion. And Mike Tomlin, the feelings are mutual between him and Shedeur. He has no problem taking Shedeur if he's still on the board when it's the Steelers' turn to pick with the 21st overall selection. And it looks like the Browns are probably going to go Travis Hunter. The Giants are going to go best player available. And I thought that all the chips were perfectly aligned for Shedeur Sanders to be the Steelers' quarterback this year. He's the best option that the Steelers have at this point. I feel he's a pro-ready quarterback. You can insert him into the starting lineup in week 1. He's good going through his reads, takes care of the football. He's very accurate. And with the supporting cast that he'll be inheriting in Pittsburgh, he could have a really good rookie season. However, Derek Carr has fucked over the Steelers' plans completely when it comes to Shedeur Sanders, because him and his team have taken it upon themselves to leak a story about his shoulder injury so they can use that as leverage to manage a trade out of New Orleans or to just get him cut altogether so he can start elsewhere. And this has put the Steelers in a really bad spot now. Because now with Derek Carr possibly wanting out of New Orleans, the Saints are going to be forced to draft a quarterback with the 9th overall selection, and that more than likely is going to be Shedeur Sanders, who was supposed to be a Pittsburgh Steeler. So now the Steelers are going to have to be forced to draft either Jalen Milroe or Jackson Dart 21st overall. And the reason why they're going to be regulated to have to draft one of these guys in the first round is due to them not having a second-round pick. And if you don't want to drive Jalen Milroe or Jackson Dart, and you want to roll the dice on the other available quarterbacks on the market, possibly either you trade for Kirk Cousins, who in his last 4 to 5 starts as a Falcon had 1 touchdown and 9 interceptions, he's washed. Or you could get the guy that currently has effed the Steelers over and put the Steelers in this bad quarterback predicament, trading for Derek Carr, which wouldn't help the Steelers go any further than where they've gone these last couple of years. And what frustrates me about this predicament is that Derek Carr, regardless if the Saints drafted a quarterback or not, he was still going to be the starter. It didn't really look like the Saints wanted to move on from him. They forcefully restructured his contract. And let's just be honest, Derek Carr, his 2 years that he's been in New Orleans, he hasn't really been that great. Statistically, he's been pretty good. But if you watch the games, he does nothing but throw a lot of checkdowns. He threw a hospital ball that got Chris Olave damn near broken in half and killed. The Steelers have been effed over in the worst way possible by Derek Carr, because now he has got rid of the best option that you were going to have starting for you at quarterback this year, not being able to draft Shedeur Sanders. Mike Tomlin said he has no problem rolling with Mason Rudolph as the week 1 starter, but I have a problem with it. I'm a huge believer that Mike Tomlin is a quarterback away from having the Steelers back in the Super Bowl conversation, which is why I never get on here and call for Mike Tomlin to get fired. It's been a very long time since I had one of my epic fire Mike Tomlin rants, because I'm one of the few people that seems to be realistic about the whole entire playoff drought the Steelers have gone through. Yes, the Steelers have gone a very long time for the playoff win. And when Mike Tomlin had Big Ben a future first ballot Hall of Famer, or at least he should be, the Steelers were still coming up short. But over these last couple of years, with Mike Tomlin going into these playoff games against MVP quarterbacks and Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, I was never expecting the Steelers to win those games with the quarterback play that they were getting. You're not going to win in a conference that's loaded with the majority of the NFL's best quarterbacks, with guys like Mason Rudolph and a watch Russell Wilson. You can't expect Mike Tomlin to win a playoff game when he's going into a gunfight with a plastic straw. That's pretty much what he's been given, which is why it's unfair to call for Mike Tomlin's job every time the Steelers come up short in the postseason when you know it's a quarterback-driven league. They say this all the time. It's a pass-heavy league. And if you don't have a good quarterback, you don't have a chance in hell at making a deep playoff run. You're expecting Mike Tomlin to turn shit into gold trying to win with these washed quarterbacks that the Steelers are going to have to pick from between either Kirk Cousins or Derek Carr. How about none of them? I'd rather have Jalen Milroe or Jackson Dart than roll it with Derek Carr or Kirk Cousins this season. The Steelers find themselves in the same position that they've been since the retirement of Big Ben Roethlisberger, playing musical chairs and Russian roulette at the quarterback position. This is the most important position in the NFL when it comes to determining how successful of a team you're going to be. And if you don't have at least average quarterback play, which the Steelers could definitely get out of Aaron Rodgers despite his age and what happened with the New York Jets. He's better than anything that the Steelers have. I can't get behind the crowd that says, let's just run it with Mason Rudolph and try to get a quarterback next year when we have an aging group of veterans on defense. Cam Hayward, TJ Watt, Minka Fitzpatrick, they have sacrificed a lot for this team. They deserve the opportunity to have a quarterback that gives them a fair shot to win in the playoffs. Not settling for some doggone Mason Rudolph. Not settling for watch Kirk O'Chains or watch Derek Carr. I want a freaking quarterback, for crying out loud. How long are the Steelers going to continue to play this game with these Randall jabronis at quarterback? Eventually, you got to find the franchise guy, and Shedeur Sanders is that answer. But Derek Carr has effed the Steelers over with him putting out these reports from his team about this doggone shoulder injury that nobody knew about until now. And he has effed the Steelers over in the worst way possible, because now we have no shot in hell at landing Shedeur Sanders unless we trade the farm to the Carolina Panthers for the 8th overall pick. I'm so sick of this shit, man. I'm tired of being a Steelers fan at this point. At this point, if Kirk Cousins or Derek Carr or Mason Rudolph is the Steelers starting quarterback week 1 this season, I'm strongly considering disassociating myself as a Steeler fan and just becoming a fan of the NFL at this point. I refuse to continue to support a team that does the same thing year after year, putting these situations when they have to settle for below average quarterback play. And I don't blame this on Mike Tomlin. I blame this on the guys in the front office that wear the black and white suit and ties. Thank you a lot, Derek Carr, for effing over the Steelers when it comes to the quarterback situation once again, because thanks to you, we're not going to have a shot at drafting Shedeur Sanders. You have screwed the Steelers, and I hope that you don't take a single snap as a starting quarterback in the league ever again. Thanks a lot for scoring over Pittsburgh. Now we can't land Shedeur Sanders. Now we got to run it back with another year of below average quarterback play. And you wonder why Mike Tomlin can't win a playoff game. How the hell is Mike Tomlin supposed to compete against these aliens like Lamar and Josh Allen with a guy like a Mason Rudolph? And now we went from Justin Fields to Aaron Rodgers, Shedeur Sanders, then now looking at Derek Carr, Kirk Cousins, having to be okay with drafting Jalen Milroe and Jackson Dart in the first round. Just take me out now, God. Just take me out now. Just end the pain before it gets even worse as being a Steelers fan right now. Thanks a lot, Derek Carr. You fucked us over in the worst way. If you haven't already, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, turn on post notifications so you don't miss when we drop new content. Jim Harbaugh has been winning in the NFL for a very long time. In his first 3 years as the head coach of the 49ers, he took them to 3 straight NFC championship games, and the Super Bowl appearance included during that span. Then he went back to college, delivered a national championship to his alma mater, and he came back last year. In his first season back in the National Football League, he overachieved, leading the Chargers to the postseason, where on paper, going into last season, they didn't look like a playoff team, but you gave them the benefit of a doubt due to Jim Harbaugh's resume and track record of being able to win everywhere he goes. And with what the Chargers did last year and what they've done in free agency so far, investing into improving the offensive line, bringing in Najee Harris at running back, who should be really good behind that offensive line. You bring in a few key pieces on defense as well. Not a lot of big name guys, but guys who could be good rotational pieces. But yet, NFL fans, and Chargers fans included, are still not happy with the current state of the team. They still refuse to accept how Jim Harbaugh wins. They keep pushing the issue that the Chargers have to draft a wide receiver in the first round of this year's draft when Jim Harbaugh has won with guys like Vernon Davis and Michael Crabtree being his top weapons in the passing game? Last year, Ladd McConkey was a second-round pick and was the Chargers' best wideout. Jim Harbaugh has shown time after time, even when he was coaching college ball at Michigan, that he doesn't need elite wide receiver play to win the championship. So why is it that guys in the NFL media and Chargers fans keep worrying about the Chargers passing on a wide receiver in the first round of this year's draft? They will be perfectly okay if they take another offensive lineman or trade up for a defensive lineman or a guy like Will Johnson in the first round of the 2025 NFL draft. Not getting an elite wide receiver this offseason will not hurt the Los Angeles Chargers. There were people who were disappointed because they didn't go after DK Metcalf. DK Metcalf is not worth the hefty contract that the Steelers just gave him. There's no sense in trading for a guy like Tyreek Hill, who's a locker room cancer and is just an awful human being off the field. All the Chargers need is to continue to cement themselves on the line of scrimmage. Jim Harbaugh's philosophy works. It's worked in San Francisco. It worked last year. You know the old saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Chargers fans need to stop stressing over this team possibly passing on a wide receiver in the first round. They will be perfectly okay. Why? Because that's not the way Jim Harbaugh wins football games. It's crazy to think that there's more than one way to win a Super Bowl. The Ravens have won the Super Bowl despite not having a stacked team of wide receivers. They won the Super Bowl against Jim Harbaugh with Anquan Bolden, who was up there in age, Torrey Smith, and Dennis Pitta. There's been plenty of teams that have won Super Bowls despite not having elite perimeter play. Hell, the Eagles dominated the Chiefs in this past year's Super Bowl. Why? Not because they had A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, but because they outright dominated the Chiefs on the line of scrimmage. Games are won and lost based off what you do in the trenches. The Cincinnati Bengals have 40 to almost 50% of their salary cap invested in 3 players, which is going to hinder them from ever making it back to another Super Bowl again, at least for the foreseeable future. Because now, with you paying Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, and Jamar Chase so much money, you're not going to have enough to spread around to make sure that you have a completely balanced football team. You're going to be lacking the talent needed on the offensive line, and you're not going to have a lot of great pieces on defense, which is going to put even more pressure on you to nail the draft, something that the Cincinnati Bengals have been pretty hit or miss at doing. You don't want to overinvest at wide receiver, where it's a position that is more flash than it is necessity. The idea of having an elite wide receiver looks good aesthetically, but it is not something that is a must-have if you want to compete for a Super Bowl. Something that you gotta have if you want to compete for a Super Bowl is good defensive line play. Because how else are you going to be able to get a guy like Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson off the field when it matters the most late in the fourth quarter in a playoff game? How are you going to be able to keep your star quarterback Justin Herbert upright, who is probably the toughest quarterback in the league with all of the injuries that he was playing through last year? A huge reason why the Chargers lost that playoff game to the Texans in the wildcard round wasn't all because they had bad receiver play, but Justin Herbert just had an off game. Yeah, there were a good amount of drops in that game, but that still doesn't mean Jim Harbaugh needs to pivot away from what has worked all throughout his coaching career. If you have been able to make it to the playoffs like what you did last year without having elite receiver play, you can do the same thing again. Your offensive coordinator is Greg Roman. The guy treats 3 tight end sets like they're 4 wide receiver sets. Greg Roman's offenses have been good enough to win championships. They tried to scapegoat him in Baltimore, say he was holding back Lamar Jackson. And yet the Ravens still have been unable to get over the hump despite having a new offensive coordinator, Todd Monken, who's done a very good job. He's elevated that offense to a different level that they weren't able to reach under Greg Roman, yet they continue to still get the same results. Jim Harbaugh understands what it takes to win in the NFL, and it doesn't include having an elite wide receiver. You don't need to have top wide receiver play to win in today's NFL. There are other ways to win other than being built like the Philadelphia Eagles. You still got to have identity. And the identity of Jim Harbaugh is being able to push you around, want to win the time of possession battle, emphasizing ball security, and relying on having a great defense. He doesn't need to invest high draft picks into receiver. This isn't even a great wide receiving class. It's a solid wide receiver class, but not as good as what we've seen like last year when you had guys like Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas Jr. This is a draft class that has a good amount of wide receiver twos, a lot of maybe low-end wide receiver ones that you can get in the middle portions of this year's draft. The Chargers could walk away with a guy like Torrey Horton. If you don't know who he is, he's a really good wide receiver from Colorado State. I call him the Colorado Killer because I found out about him a few years ago when Deion was in his first year at Colorado, and he was torching that Colorado Buffs defense. If you get a guy like a Torrey Horton in the mid-rounds, or if you walk away with a Tyler Warren or Colton Loveland in the first round, that'll be another weapon for Justin Herbert to throw the football to. But if you go offensive lineman, defensive line in the first round, there's nothing wrong with that because that is the identity that Jim Harbaugh has been comfortable with being able to have success with. And if it isn't broke, there's no reason to derive away from that. The Miami Dolphins are unraveling right now. You got Tyreek Hill, who once again is involved in another domestic incident. I was listening to the 911 call that I guess his mother-in-law made, the mother of his now newly divorced wife, when I guess they were scared he was going to throw the baby off the patio. And then you got Jalen Ramsey, who is now on the trade block. And when Vic Fangio, the current defensive coordinator of the Philadelphia Eagles, who just helped them win a Super Bowl, ended up parting ways mutually with this organization, it was a foreshadowing of what was to come, which is a situation that the Dolphins are in now where you just have to make a complete reset when it comes to the culture in your locker room. Vic Fangio did a fantastic job with the Miami Dolphins defense during his time as a defensive coordinator. For the amount of injuries that he had to deal with, the Dolphins still had a top 12, top 15 defense that year. But Vic Fangio had a lot of friction with the players on the defense side of the ball that he was working with. He had a problem with their work ethic, their commitment to the game, and players didn't really like his old school coaching philosophy, you know, being hard-nosed, being a disciplinarian, holding guys accountable. They didn't like that. And they didn't like that they had a coach that wanted them to act like professionals, to act like champions. And it's no wonder now you have Mike McDaniel at the end of the season in the press conference saying guys are continually showing up to meetings late, and it doesn't matter if you find them, they still continue to do it. That's because there's a lack of respect in the organization between the players and the coach. When you have guys that are unwilling to take coaching from somebody that has been one of the best defensive coordinators in the NFL for over a decade, a guy whose defense has influenced nearly half of the current defensive coordinators in the league, it's an indictment on the culture of your organization. And the Miami Dolphins look soft, which is what they were when Vic Fangio left. When Vic Fangio left, he pretty much said, guys don't want to work, guys don't want to be coach hard. They want to be a soft football team. And that's why the Dolphins struggle to win these big games. That's why they continue to fold during the second half of the year, why they continue to get pushed around every time they play the Buffalo Bills, why they continue to be a one-and-done playoff team, because they lack discipline, because they are a poorly coached team. You can have the best roster in the world and not have anything to show for it come playoff time because you are an easy wild card exit because you're a poorly coached team that doesn't have the ability to be disciplined. And Vic Fangio exposed everything that was to come with the current situation that the Dolphins are in. A lot of the issues that the Dolphins have isn't necessarily because they've paid the wrong guys, they've made bad draft picks. It's due to this team being soft from a mentality standpoint. You see, to be a physical football team, it's not just about having all of these great offensive linemen, these great defensive linemen. It starts up here. And Vic Fangio, from a mentality standpoint, it doesn't get more hard-nosed and hardcore than him. And that's why he wanted to go to Philadelphia. Yeah, Philadelphia was his dream job, and he has a bunch of family members in that part of the country. But if the Dolphins were willing to put in more work, or at least the players were willing to put in the commitment that it took to be great, he wouldn't want to depart it from Miami. He was one of the highest paid, if not the highest paid defensive coordinator in the league. So it's not like the money wasn't good. They would compensated him pretty well. But it's hard to work with guys who are unwilling to put in the effort that it takes to be a championship team. You see, the Dolphins right now have to trade Tyreek Hill. They have to get rid of Jalen Ramsey because these guys are not team-oriented individuals. My high school coach used to always say, one team, one goal. The Dolphins don't align with that. It's just a bunch of mercenaries running around. When you have Jalen Ramsey, Tyreek Hill always showing up to meetings late, it shows how unserious you are about winning. If Jalen Ramsey was playing for the Baltimore Ravens and he always showed up to meetings late, Lamar Jackson probably would be on his ass. The rest of the team would probably be on his ass because championship teams hold themselves accountable. Not just the coaches, but their fellow teammates. The Dolphins don't do that. They don't have leadership in this organization from the top down. You don't have leadership from the players. You don't have leadership from the coaches, at least leadership that these players respect. Mike McDaniel is one of my favorite coaches. He's a player-friendly coach, but to an extent where he's so friendly, his players don't take him serious enough. And when you look at him, he kind of reminds me of Leonard from The Big Bang Theory. With the glasses, the guy's wearing the off-white sneakers. It's hard to really take him seriously. If you were to see Mike McDaniel out in public, he wouldn't strike you as a dude that's a football coach. You would think that he's some kind of astrophysicist or he works for NASA or something. I never would have thought in a million years a guy like a Mike McDaniel would be a football coach. And when he first got hired by the Dolphins and I looked at him, I was like, are they going to be able to take this guy seriously? Are the players really going to respect him? Brian Flores had the respect of the players in the locker room. Yeah, he was hard on Tua, but Tua, even though he has flourished under Mike McDaniel, he still hasn't showed up in the big games when it has mattered the most. And Brian Flores kind of called Tua soft. And is Brian Flores wrong when you look at it now about what he has said about Tua? I don't really think so. The team embodies the personality of their head coach and of their quarterback. And that's why Vic Fangio got him on out of South Florida, because he didn't align with the soft mentality that is instilled in this Dolphins organization. The players weren't receptive to Vic Fangio's coaching, and it's no wonder why guys were routinely showing up late. With the departure of Vic Fangio, it exposed just how soft the Miami Dolphins truly were last season. Now, Tyreek Hill and Jalen Ramsey got to go because you got to reset the culture, and you're not going to be able to do that when you have two of the highest paid guys in your roster setting a bad example for the rest of the team. Hey, man, if you listen to podcasts, check us out on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts from. The JT Sports Podcast is available. Give us a 5-star review if you enjoy. When I hop in the shower before I go to bed every night, I like to listen to sports podcasts, mainly Colin Cowherd. And last week, he was out on vacation, so had to listen to Jason McIntyre, who I like more than the majority of people out there. And there was a take that really caught my eye. He said that the Kansas City Chiefs won't make the playoffs this year. So you once again have another guy in the national media who's wrongly predicting the downfall of what has been one of the greatest dynasties in the history of sports. And when I first clicked on this segment, he starts out saying, I know Chiefs fans and me don't have a good relationship and they're going to hate me even more after this take. So I already knew what I was getting myself into. I knew this kind of was going to trigger around the lines of rage bait territory, and that's exactly what it was. The reasons that he listed for Kansas City missing the playoffs with, I disagree with every single one of them. The first one is the offensive line situation. That's the go-to that people like to use to make the argument against Kansas City falling off, which the offensive line definitely is important. But you can overcome having a bad offensive line and at least be a playoff team. The Bengals went to the Super Bowl with one of the worst offensive lines in the Super Bowl era. They had nothing but backups and jabronis the year that they lost to the Rams in the Super Bowl. You know, the rest of the division, like the Raiders, they don't have a good offensive line. But teams like the Broncos and the Chargers, although they do have a better offensive line than Kansas City, they still have holes in other areas. Chargers fans are pleading with Jim Harbaugh to get an elite receiver, and he still refuses to do so. They have a few holes in the secondary that they have to fill. The Raiders have holes all across the board on offense. Outside of Brock Bowers, can you name me another weapon that Geno Smith has at his disposal without using Google? The only name that you probably could think of is Jacoby Myers, and that's about it. Yeah, you upgrade at quarterback and head coach with Pete Carroll and Geno Smith, but you're no better now than what you were last year. You just have a slightly better quarterback and better coaching. But you still have a lot of holes in that roster to fill. And the Kansas City Chiefs winning a bunch of one-possession games last year shouldn't be an indictment against them when they've been to the AFC Championship for 7 straight years. I'm 23 years old, just turned 23 in March. The Kansas City Chiefs have been in the AFC Championship every single year since my sophomore year of high school. You just don't have this level of dominance by getting lucky. And that's pretty much what Jason McIntyre is insinuating when he wants to use they've won a lot of one-possession games. The following season, you probably won't be as lucky. It's not luck if you do it more than once. In football, luck is a little bit of a factor when it comes to winning games. That's just a part of the game. That's with any sport that you play. But Kansas City has been the gold standard of what every franchise in the NFL aims to be. Raiders, Broncos, Chargers, and everybody else in the AFC included. You see, the key cog to the Chiefs' success is not Travis Kelce. It is not having a stacked team. They lost Tyreek Hill and went on to win 2 Super Bowls right after they got rid of him. The cog in the Chiefs' machine is Mahomes and Andy Reid. And as long as these two brothers still stay in KC, this dynasty is not going anywhere. Will they win the AFC West this year? I can't guarantee that. I definitely do believe that the Broncos and the Chargers are more than capable of being able to end the Chiefs' streak of AFC West titles. But even if they do finish in second, third place in this division, they still are locked to win 10 games. The Cincinnati Bengals, a team that Jason McIntyre used that probably could steal a playoff spot from Kansas City, they are investing nearly 50% of their salary cap into 3 players, and they have holes at so many different positions that they have to overcompensate to fill those holes in the draft, area that has been hit or miss when it comes to the Bengals front office. there's a strong chance that the Bengals are no better than what they were last year. They could be a 7-win team for all we know because Zach Taylor could have already peaked. I strongly doubt Zach Taylor is ever going to be able to get the Bengals to another Super Bowl. He's not really an elite coach. He's an okay coach, but not a great coach. He isn't one of those coaches that can have you ready for big situations late in the game. Situational football is what separates Kansas City from every other team in the NFL. No team is better situationally than what Kansas City is, mainly due to Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes is arguably the greatest quarterback in NFL history because he always shows up when the game is on the line. When you have the ball in 15's hands with an opportunity to go ahead and win it, he always comes through. That's what great players do. And despite Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, you can make the argument that they were better than Patrick Mahomes last year. But at the end of the day, what did that get any of those teams when it mattered the most? Getting sent home by Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes is having the similar impact on the NFL that Michael Jordan had on the NBA during his 90s runs with the Chicago Bulls. The only time we got another NBA Finals champion outside of Jordan during the 90s was when MJ was retired. When MJ was playing in the NBA during the 90s Bulls era, guys like John Stockton, Karl Malone, Charles Barkley retired ringless due to the greatness and the dominance of Michael Jordan. And you're seeing the same thing play out with Patrick Mahomes. There's a strong possibility that Mahomes probably ends up being the Bill Russell of the NFL. He wins like 8-9 Super Bowls, and guys like Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow retire ringless because they just couldn't beat Patrick Mahomes. The Chiefs, you're better off betting on them to win the Super Bowl than you are betting on them to miss the playoffs. I know Jason McIntyre is somebody that loves a lot of gambling talk. He loves talking odds. He loves talking spreads. Let me give you some odds. The chances that the Chiefs have of missing the playoffs are the same odds that my grandma has of winning the lottery. 1 in a million. There is no chance unless Patrick Mahomes has a Tom Brady ACL tear that sidelines him for the entirety of the season. Unless that happens, the Chiefs are not going to miss the playoffs. What gets overlooked is how the rest of this division has teams that, yeah, they may look on paper as good as Kansas City, but when the games get actually played come playoff time, they aren't able to deliver. Justin Herbert is viewed as the most overrated quarterback in the league for a reason. Even if he does have the necessary talent around him to win a Super Bowl, there's no guarantee that Justin Herbert is going to show up and play at a good enough level to beat Patrick Mahomes. The only time Patrick Mahomes has lost in the Super Bowl was when he had no shot to win it. You got to blow out Patrick Mahomes for him not to have a chance. The Eagles just completely eradicated Kansas City because they dominated them up front. Same thing happened when Mahomes and the Chiefs lost to the Buccaneers and Tom Brady in 2020 in that weird year. The only time you can truly stop the Chiefs is if you just can blow this team out. And the majority of NFL games are decided by one possession, which is why Jason McIntyre's point of the Chiefs having a bunch of one possession wins is such a mute point. Most games are decided by 7 points or less. Every single week, you don't have the best teams in the league blowing out everybody. Hell, the Baltimore Ravens lost early during the season to the freaking Las Vegas Raiders. Who cares about style points? This is the NFL, not college football. Style points do not matter. All you see at the end of the season is the Kansas City Chiefs being in the Super Bowl. That's all that matters. It doesn't matter how you get there. Good teams find ways to win. And it's not as if Kansas City just had one lucky season. They've been doing this for nearly an entire decade. Andy Reid has been at this for 2 decades now. He's the best coach in the NFL with the best quarterback in the league, and that automatically makes Kansas City to be a sure lock in the playoffs every single year. Yes, Travis Kelce is getting old, and you can say that he's washed, but you got Rashee Rice coming back. who it doesn't look like the NFL is going to give him any punishment for any off-the-field incidents that he's been involved with. You got Marquise Brown, who you re-signed, who was pretty pivotal during the Kansas City Chiefs playoff run this past year. You got Xavier Worthy, who became the Chiefs' go-to guy at the end of the season. So you got a pretty good receiving core coming back. You're good at running back. Your offensive line, you get rid of Joe Thuney, who was getting up there in age. The guy was pretty much entering his mid-30s to where you can expect him to decline. The key to what made the Patriots dynasty so great is that they didn't hold on to guys longer than what they needed to. They were willing to move off guys. You have to move off from guys to continue to build a championship team year after year. Some guys aren't going to be able to perform at the same level at an older age than what they were when they were young. And eventually there's going to come a time when they have to move on from Chris Jones, but they will adjust because that's what great franchises do. When the Rams lost Aaron Donald, did they get worse? No. They end up replacing him with 4 or 5 guys that are absolute studs because they're good at drafting, they're good at player development, and they're an overall great franchise, which the Chiefs are. As I said, the Chiefs are not just the gold standard of the NFL, but they are the gold standard of what every sports organization, regardless of league, MLB, NHL, NBA, everybody's aiming to be what Kansas City is. When you have this level of dominance for so long, it's not luck. You can expect to see Kansas City in the playoffs. You can expect to see Kansas City at least make it to the divisional round. The worst season that the Chiefs have is being 1 game short of making it to the Super Bowl. There's no reason to see a downfall coming anytime soon from Kansas City unless Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes decide to exit the league at the same time. That's the only way the Chiefs don't make it to the playoffs. The Chiefs don't need to have an insanely stacked team to win. They win games because, for one, you got the best quarterback in the league, and 2, you got the best head coach in the league, and 3, you got the best big game defensive coordinator in the history of the NFL in Steve Spagnuolo. When you compare the Chiefs dynasty to the Patriots dynasty, Tom Brady played with more Hall of Fame players than what Patrick Mahomes has played with. In terms of when you look at what he has on offense and when you look at what Tom Brady had on the defense side of football, those Patriots defenses were absolutely loaded. He was playing with like 7, 8, 9 Hall of Fame guys on the offensive line, on the defense, receiver included. Mahomes has probably played with 3, 4 Hall of Fame talents. The Chiefs are winning not because they're stat, but because they are a well-coached team. Coaching matters more in this league than talent. You can overcome limitations because you have great quarterback play who can elevate the guys around them, and you have a great coach who can scheme around any inefficiency that you may have. And that's why I feel this was a rage bait take from Jason McIntyre. It was just straight rage bait to me. The Raiders are not going to be that good this year with the weaponry that they have on offense. And Pete Carroll, despite him being a defensive-minded coach, Seattle's defense post-Legion of Boom was god-awful. They ranked like near the bottom half of the NFL in yards per game, points per game allowed, and Pete Carroll's final couple of seasons. There's a reason why Seattle moved on from him. He's the oldest head coach in the NFL right now, and there's no guarantee that the Raiders are going to be all that better than what they were last year. They probably win 3, 4 more games than what they did in 2024, but you're looking at maybe a fringe playoff team at best where maybe they're competing for the 7th seed. At least Kansas City winning 10 games, you know that they're at least going to be in contention to at least get a home field playoff game, and if not, if they do have to go on the road and play Baltimore in the first round of the wild card round, they're more than capable of being able to make a Super Bowl run despite not having home field advantage. They did it before. They can definitely do it again. You remember a few years ago when they ended up having to play the Miami Dolphins in the first round, and there was a good consensus out there that thought the Dolphins could send them home, and you saw that played out. Doubting Kansas City is a bigger risk than picking them to not win the Super Bowl. I'd rather pick Kansas City to win the Super Bowl than bet against them not making it to the playoffs. The chances of that happening are slim to none. When you have the best coach and the best quarterback in the league, it's damn near impossible to miss out on the postseason. Coaching matters more than having a talented team. We've seen the Dallas Cowboys overachieve for years with stacked rosters when they had Jason Garrett. Hell, Jason, you love the Los Angeles Chargers. Did you not pick them to make it to the playoffs last year? Why did you pick the Chargers to make it to the postseason last year despite not having a talented team? Because of the coach. Why did the Denver Broncos overachieve last year? Because of Sean Payton. That's why Colin Cowherd picked the Broncos to be a sleeper team last year, because of how good of a coach Sean Payton is. Time after time, this league has showed us that talent is a part of winning, but coaching matters more than having a talented team. When you go into the Super Bowl against a team as stacked as the Philadelphia Eagles, that's when coaching isn't enough to get you far. The Buffalo Bills have had a better team than Kansas City for the last 3 years, and yet, where has that guy in Buffalo? Sent home every time they play Mahomes. Same thing with the Baltimore Ravens. Where has that guy in Baltimore? Sent home when Patrick Mahomes came into Baltimore and sent Lamar and company packing when he won his second MVP. Talent is such a small part of what makes a championship team. Chemistry, camaraderie, having a quarterback that always delivers when the game is on the line in crunch time, and the elite head coach that has an elite understanding of situational football is what makes the Chiefs the machine that they've been for so many years. I could not believe my eyes when I read the title and seen the thumbnail of Jason saying that the Chiefs were missed the playoffs. This is insanity. This is the equivalent to when Max Kellerman was going with the whole cliff theory with Tom Brady. He was going to fall off. He was going to decline slowly over the course of a 4 or 5 year span. And what happened? Tom Brady never declined. I don't see the Chiefs missing the playoffs this year. I strongly disagree with Jason on this take that I consider rage bait. And he knew exactly what he was doing with this. He knows deep down in his heart, rather he wants to admit it or not, the Chiefs are going to be in the playoffs this year. He even said this. He said, I'm probably going to be wrong. So if you know you're going to be wrong, why say this? You knew exactly what you was doing, my guy. You knew what you was doing. And you got the reaction that you was looking for. For 5 straight seasons, the Buffalo Bills have dominated the AFC East, but that's soon about to change with the arrival of a new head man in Foxborough. The Buffalo Bills have had the luxury of cakewalking through the NFL's easiest division, where you have the Jets, who are routinely irrelevant. You got the Miami Dolphins, who you always beat because they're soft, and the Patriots, because after the departure of Tom Brady, they just weren't good anymore. But now, with the New England Patriots hiring Mike Vrabel, the Buffalo Bills have a new problem on their hands in the AFC East. You have a head coach that now is on the same level as what Sean McDermott is. They kind of have the same mentality. They are defensive-minded coaches. They're good culture builders. And they immediately turn around any franchise that they take over. We seem to forget, as good as what Sean McDermott has been with Josh Allen, the guy ended the Buffalo Bills' very long playoff drought with Tyrod Taylor at quarterback. But Mike Vrabel is on the same level, if not slightly better than what Sean McDermott was, because during Mike Vrabel's time in Tennessee, he was making it to the playoffs, overachieving with rosters that were heavily littered with injuries. And with the situation that he's going into with the Patriots, you got a young, promising quarterback with hella upside in Drake May, who looks like a Josh Allen clone. You're improving the offensive line. You've improved the defense. You asked Stephon Diggs in free agency. You're probably going to add another good wide receiver in the draft. The Patriots are on par to match the Buffalo Bills this year in terms of being able to go toe-to-toe, pound for pound with them for the AFC East title. Every single season, for the most part, we see a team go from being the worst team in the division to at least being a playoff football team. And the Buffalo Bills get the luxury of getting 4 guaranteed wins every single year when they've played the Buffalo Bills, the Miami Dolphins, and the New York Jets. So it isn't just 4, but it's 6 guaranteed wins. That's about to change now. With the New England Patriots having Mike Vrabel, there's no guarantee that the Buffalo Bills are going to sweep the Patriots and get 2 easy wins anymore. There's no guarantee that the Buffalo Bills are going to be able to just run through this division with Mike Vrabel now in the mix, because you have a coach that knows what it takes to build a championship caliber squad. Although he hasn't been to a Super Bowl, Mike Vrabel, being around Bill Belichick, he knows what a championship team looks like. He knows what he has to instill in his organization to turn things around fast, and that's what he's going to do. He's not just a defensive-minded coach, but he's a great culture builder. And with him bringing back Josh McDaniels, the offense should be even better than what we've seen out of New England these last couple years. When Mac Jones had that good rookie season and the Patriots made it to the playoffs, Josh McDaniels was the offensive coordinator that year. And you saw how things fell apart when Josh McDaniels left. The Bills still have a few holes that they have to worry about. Your defense needs more help in the secondary. On offense, what are you going to do with James Cook? What are you going to do at receiver? Yeah, you re-signed Khalil Shakir, but who else do you have at wide receiver? Keon Coleman had a pretty disappointing rookie season. Dalton Kincaid, where was he last year? The Buffalo Bills are far from being this juggernaut team that the media hypes them up to be. And this year, I don't really see a big gap between them and the New England Patriots in terms of talent. But even if the Bills are a more talented team than New England, what helps close that gap is coaching. The Bills have lost to the Kansas City Chiefs for how many years in the playoffs, despite being the more talented team? Talent doesn't guarantee you wins in this league, but coaching does. If you have a good coach and a halfway decent team, you can win damn near any division and make it to the playoffs. And that's what the Patriots are going to have the ability or the potential to do this season. Now that you're going to be a well-coached team with Mike Vrabel, you're not going to be losing games like how you did with Gerard Mayo, with bad decisions and certain situations, a guy who just was inexperienced, learning on the job. Mike Vrabel is one of the better coaches that you will find in the NFL. And he's a really damn good equivalent to Sean McDermott. And I don't really think that Sean McDermott is as good as what you may think. If Sean McDermott has had the luxury of going up against the post-Brady Patriots and a soft Dolphins team with Mike McDaniel and the Jets team that's always bad, what's going to happen where he now has an equivalent in this division in terms of coaching? I think that means that the Buffalo Bills, 5 consecutive years of winning the AFC East, comes to an end this year. And I very well could be wrong, but you can't stay on top forever. And when you have a coach as good as Mike Vrabel, eventually he's going to break through. And I think he's going to break through fairly fast, New England, with the jump that Drake May could take in year 2. Year 2 is normally when you start to see young quarterbacks cement themselves and they cement their spot in the league. Drake May was really good considering the situation that he was in last year, where the only reliable receiver he had was DeMario Pop Douglas, who was playing behind a team that struggled to run the football, had a terrible offensive line, and he was still balling out. I can imagine what he's going to be this year with a good offensive coordinator in Josh McDaniels, a really good receiver in Stephon Diggs, along with some other weapons, whoever they pick up in the draft, and a pretty good head coach in Mike Vrabel. The Patriots have enough talent to challenge the Buffalo Bills for the AFC East this year, and I'm picking them to win this division. This division is a 2-team race. It's the Bills, the Patriots, and everybody else. And with the talent that the Patriots have on defense, you improve the pass rush. You got Christian Gonzalez, a top 3 corner in the league. They got a good enough team on paper to where they can rival the Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills roster is not as good as what it's hyped up to be. This team has had the luxury of having 6 easy wins every single year because they've gone up against teams that have been poorly coached. Now, the Patriots aren't just a team that you look at on the schedule and you mark them down as a guaranteed win. You could very well split the season series this upcoming season against New England. I like New England's chances year one under Mike Vrabel to win the AFC East. He's a really good head coach. He's a great culture builder. And this Patriots team is a lot better talent-wise than what they look on paper. You know what they say, looks can be deceiving. And that's what it looks like trying to evaluate this Patriots team. On paper, yeah, getting a guy like a Harold Landry may not be a name that's going to make you jump out of your seat. But this is a guy that has had at least 8 sacks or more his last couple of years, despite having an ACL injury. He's been one of the more consistent and productive pass rushers in this league that's not in the upper echelon of pass rushers like a TJ Watt or Myles Garrett or Michael Parsons, but he's a pretty good B-tier pass rusher. And that's what the Patriots need. Imagine if you get Christian Barmore and you can pair him alongside of Milton Williams that you got in free agency from the Philadelphia Eagles. Christian Barmore and Milton Williams could be one of the better defensive tackle tandems in the NFL. Like, don't sleep on the New England Patriots with Mike Vrabel as their head coach in year one. He definitely has a good shot of being able to elevate the Patriots from being the worst team in this division to winning the AFC East crown. We normally see a team every single season go from worst to first in their division, and this is the year that the Patriots could be one of those teams to accomplish that. Bryce Young was the worst quarterback that I ever seen prior to him getting benched by the Panthers last year. In his first 2 games, the Panthers struggled to move the ball even past the 50-yard line, and he had 3 interceptions and only scored 1 touchdown, which came in garbage time. But after he got benched, he had a conversation with a rapper named Rod Wave. And I don't know what the hell Rod Wave told Bryce Young. I don't know what voodoo, what magic he put on Bryce Young, but whatever he did, Bryce Young went from looking like the biggest bust in NFL history to becoming the hottest quarterback during the second half of last year when he finished the season with 20 total touchdowns and only 5 interceptions during that stretch. Whatever Rod Wave told Bryce Young, it worked, and the Carolina Panthers need to hire Rod Wave to serve in some role on their staff. Rather, if it's an ambassador, let him be Bryce Young's quarterback coach, let him serve in a similar role for the Panthers that Big Dom does for the Philadelphia Eagles. The Panthers just need to hire Rod Wave and have him closer to the organization. Because when you can have a pep talk with the guy that was one of the worst quarterbacks ever, and he just all of a sudden transforms back to what he looked like in college, you got to get him closer to the organization because he's nothing but good luck. That's what Rod Wave is for Bryce Young. He's his good luck charm. And the closer you allow Rod Wave to be the Bryce Young, the better he's going to play. And I really want to know what Rod Wave told Bryce Young. I'm assuming he gave him one of those casual motivational speeches. Hey, Bryce, you're the man. You're a former Heisman Trophy winner. You were the #1 overall pick. You are the best quarterback in the history of Alabama football. You got that dog in you. You just got to bring it out. You see, what makes Rod Wave such a great artist is that his music, you feel it in your soul. It just touches you differently. When you listen to Rod, you just feel uplifted. And what Rod Wave did to Bryce Young is he gave him a little bit of soul power. That's what Bryce Young needed. At a time when he was at the lowest point of his career, you got to remember, Bryce Young, despite his size and limitations, he's dominated every level of football that he's played up to this point. High school, at modern day, Alabama, dominated, won the Heisman Trophy. And to get to the NFL and struggle, it was a feeling that Bryce Young wasn't accustomed to. And he lost all his confidence. That's what you saw in the Panthers' first 2 games with him starting last year under Dave Canales. You saw a quarterback that lost his confidence. He didn't believe in himself anymore. But with Rod Wave having that conversation to him, he talked to his soul. He unlocked that dog in Bryce Young. And all of a sudden, you saw the arrival of the Carolina Reaper. Rod Wave unleashed the Carolina Reaper. The Panthers need to hire Rod Wave to serve in some capacity on their staff. He's on tour right now. When he gets off tour, he's going to have plenty of free time, and the Panthers need to bring him in. You cannot have somebody take your quarterback from looking like the worst thing ever, make your team pretty much unwatchable. When Bryce Young was starting before he had this conversation with Rod Wave, it was hard to watch this team. It straight was. Like, I don't know how Carolina Panthers watch this team without drinking or getting high, but whatever you do, you got to give me your secret formula to watching this team, because it was hard to watch a full 60 minutes of Panthers football the first 2 weeks of last season with Bryce Young getting at the quarterback position. But all of a sudden, Rod Wave hits him up on IG, says, "Hey, Bryce Young, call me, bruh." And all of a sudden, Bryce Young ends up balling out, going toe-to-toe with Patrick Mahomes. Y'all remember that game against Kansas City? Bryce Young was on fire in that game. He was going toe-to-toe with arguably the greatest quarterback in the history of this game, and he got felled by his defense. Against the Buccaneers, he was balling out. Like, the final game of the regular season, that's when Bryce Young had his come to the NFL moment where it all started to make sense for him. And that's thanks to Rod Wave. Now, Dave Canales is going to take some of the credit. He's going to say, it was the system. We had to make some adjustments. No. Rod Wave saved Bryce Young's career. The Panthers would be doing themselves an extreme disservice not allowing this dude to serve on their staff in some capacity in any kind of role. Like, let him be the ambassador. Just let him be a lot closer to his organization. Because if he can resurrect Bryce Young, imagine what he can do if he's around this team more. Hell, if you hire Rod Wave as an assistant coach, you just might make it to the playoffs. You just might win the division, something that the Carolina Panthers haven't done in a very long time. I mean, Bryce Young had 1 touchdown and 3 interceptions. And then all of a sudden, he's talking to Rod Wave, and he looks like one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL. And I'm asking myself, when was this? This is the Bryce Young that we've been looking for. And it took you having this conversation with Rod Wave to finally start playing at this level, to finally start looking like a franchise quarterback potentially. The Panthers got to bring in Rod Wave. They got to hire this brother to do something with this team, because it seems like the only thing that happens when Rod Wave talks to these NFL players is a bunch of good. Let him be close to Bryce Young. This could be Bryce Young's good luck charm. Some people need inspiration, and other people just need somebody to believe in them. And maybe that's what Rod Wave did. Maybe what Bryce Young needed was belief that he still had what it took to live up to the expectations that came with being a first-round quarterback. The power of belief is really understated. When you're at your lowest and you feel like the world's against you, all you need is to have one conversation with the right person that can change your life forever. And that's what this convo on the phone with Bryce and Rod did for his career. He went from being somebody that might have been worse than Jamarcus Russell to all of a sudden looking like a top 15 quarterback.